Hey there everyone, welcome back to Utility Sports. Really excited for a video where we look at some potential NBA draft night trades. If you guys do enjoy, you know what to do. Smash that like button and subscribe for more NBA content. A lot of different trade ideas, trade frameworks in today's video, specifically 7 potential draft night trade frameworks. Again, emphasis on that word framework. This is the beginning discussion element of the trades. Of course, some teams might be looking to accomplish something that I can't foresee. Not every single decision, not every single trade in NBA history has been something that has worked out well for that team either. So in the comments, you might say, well, this team would never do that, or this would be stupid. Well, teams tend to do stupid stuff sometimes. So keep that in mind. And again, it's a framework, kind of the beginning structure of trades. Let me know your thoughts throughout the video. We do have a wide range of players in this video, whether it's a superstar player like Giannis Antetokounmpo or Kevin Durant. We have a couple of KD trades to talk about in today's video. Or if you're looking at some premier role players, other deals that involve getting off of an older piece for a team that maybe is looking to retool their roster a little bit. We've got a variety of different trades in today's video. And again, I hope you guys overall do enjoy. If so, leave a like and subscribe for more content. And let's jump into that big trade here, the one for Giannis Antetokounmpo. On draft night here, the Rockets, I do think, have one of the most intriguing packages to offer the Milwaukee Bucks. Now, there is a little bit of a holdup, a little bit of a snag in any deal here, and it's the fact that the Bucks do not own their own draft capital. I think for that reason, a team like New Orleans, a team like Portland, who has some future Bucks capital, are possible dark horse landing spots, not necessarily just for Giannis, but for a 3-team trade where Houston would get New Orleans on the phone. I don't have that in this trade package, but keep that in mind. In this package, though, Houston lands Giannis Antetokounmpo, arguably the best player in the entire world, one of the top 3-4 guys, no matter which way you split it. He is one of the most talented players in the league, and I use the word talented intentionally there. While, yes, a lot of the attention goes to his ability to get to the rim, dunk the basketball, finish below the rim, I think there's a ton of skill that sets him up to be able to do that, that separates him from most players. His ability to handle the basketball. He's got an incredible collection of gathers, whether it's off his spin, Euro step, the bump, and collect. There's just so much value that Giannis brings as a ball handler, and I do think that would elevate the Houston Rockets half-court offense significantly. Now, I know Rockets fans are going to say, well, what about spacing? What about the shooting? First of all, that's already a problem in place. Getting Giannis Antetokounmpo, well, it's not going to help your spacing at all. I do think just having him versus not having him is a significant advantage for your overall team offensive context. I do think he fits well with Şengün. Şengün as the screen setter, rolls into the pocket with Giannis being able to hopefully drive all the way to the rim. It creates a kind of a matchup nightmare where, okay, if you're going to put your big man on Şengün, who's going to be able to help off of Giannis? Because if you're helping onto Giannis, Şengün's going to be open in the dunker or in the pocket, and his touch, especially if we assume he's going to regain some of his form from a couple of years ago in the touch department, I think it makes the game a lot easier for him. And for Milwaukee here, point blank, I really don't love the long-term outcome of this package, but this is the type of offer I could see Milwaukee and Houston kind of starting their discussions around, and it would be Jalen Green and his $33.3 million contract, which would be essential in any kind of big trade that the Houston Rockets would probably look to make. Then Jabari Smith Jr., one of the big sweeteners in this deal, one of the key pieces that Milwaukee would be looking to grab, of course, a former top 3 overall pick. I know Rockets fans really like him in his role, and I think while there is still more potential for him to grow into and uncover, I do think if you're going to make a trade for someone who's a top 5 player in the world, Jabari Smith Jr. will likely have to be in that package. Aaron Holiday is in here for money purposes. You'll notice that this is basically a perfect dollar-for-dollar swap between Milwaukee and Houston. The Bucks get 4 players at the price of their franchise icon, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and one of those 4 players being Cam Whitmore, someone who definitely can score the basketball, a very high points per minute player so far early in his NBA career through his first 2 seasons. Now, I don't think Cam Whitmore is really a foundational piece, especially not for the Houston Rockets, but I think for Milwaukee, a team that does just flat out need more scoring juice, if they trade Giannis Antetokounmpo, I think that they can give him a better pathway, a better road to being an on-ball initiator, an on-ball scorer in the NBA than what Houston can really readily afford at this point in time. So Cam Whitmore in Milwaukee might have a better opportunity to really live up to his scoring prowess and potential that he came into the league with out of Villanova. And then there's significant draft capital. Again, remember, this is a trade framework. And one important note, this is a draft night trade, which adds extra flexibility to every team making a deal, because instead of trading the 10th pick, you're trading the draft rights of the 10th pick, whoever that may be, whether it's Kon Knippel, Noah Senge. Of course, Milwaukee would have their pick of the litter at that point in time if they do agree to this trade beforehand. So with the draft rights in mind, it also opens up the ability for Houston to trade out to pick to the year 2032, and that first round pick unprotected could become a part of this deal. They of course use some of those Phoenix assets. The 2027 unprotected first is a very valuable asset for Milwaukee to get here. You also get future picks from Houston, 2028, 2032, 2030. Those assets are in this deal. You could also look at some pick swaps being included. Of course, a litter of second round picks could be involved as well. But I think this is the beginning framework of something between Houston and Milwaukee. If you're the Bucks, you're going to push for the involvement of Alperen Şengün, Reed Shepherd, and Amen Thompson. I think if you're Houston, you need to keep those three pieces. Trading for Giannis, I think, makes a lot of sense for them, only if you're keeping your top core pieces. Alperen Şengün was their best playoff performer. Amen Thompson maybe has the highest ceiling existing on the team right now. And then Reed Shepherd, of course, is the shooter in the backcourt that I think can play off the ball at a high level off of Şengün and Amen Thompson, but can also be an on-ball initiator for them, something they gave him a decent amount of work doing when he was on the court this year, which was pretty sparingly, but still, I think for Houston, I'm going into these negotiations willing to part with almost anything that isn't Amen Thompson, Alperen Şengün, or Reed Shepherd in that order. And I think the Rockets should feel pretty comfortable, all things considered here, with this kind of package. Even though it's a big one that they do give up a lot of their future, a lot of their assets, they're getting Giannis Antetokounmpo, who's a very skilled player and one of the best players in the entire league at this date in time. Trade number 2 is a deal between Phoenix and Philadelphia. And from the thumbnail, you could tell, hey, Kevin Durant to Philadelphia, maybe a real possibility. Well, what about Paul George back to Phoenix in return? Kevin Durant goes to the 76ers as well as pick number 29. So KD as an expiring contract, I think the Suns do have very little trade flexibility here when it comes to trading Durant. Not only will he, of course, have a voice in the matter of where he wants to go, but with that expiring contract, he is a pending free agent going into the 2026 offseason. So there's pressure on whichever team does trade for him to have either an extension in place or a plan long-term to keep him there. And I do think that kind of punishes Phoenix a little bit for not trading him at the trade deadline. So they give up Kevin Durant, they give up pick 29 in this year's draft, but they get a real premium asset back to harbor Paul George's contract. PG's contract mixed with Bradley Beal's contract sets Phoenix up for some really, really rough days in the near future. But the third overall pick specifically in this deal going to Phoenix, I think, is a really great advantage for them to kind of restart the future of their franchise, to change the direction of this team long term. And if they are planning on keeping Devin Booker, this is a build around core piece for them, whether it turns into Ace Bailey or VJ Edgecombe. Maybe they look at the center spot in a very good center draft with Kamen Maluach, Derek Queen. I think Phoenix, with the third overall pick, would have a lot of long-term flexibility. And then you're also banking on Paul George maybe kind of turning back the clock a little bit. Yes, it was a terrible season for him in Philadelphia, was injured a lot, missed a lot of games, and also just wasn't as effective as we're used to seeing when he's on the court. Maybe this is a question of, hey, can Paul George kind of recover his value a little bit? And you move up 26 spots in the draft, which is really significant. You're looking at a top 3 pick and Paul George for Kevin Durant and a near second round pick at number 29. I do think there's a lot of value here both ways. Philadelphia, their entire roster gets tied together with just a flat out better player than Paul George at this point. Kevin Durant just significantly better than him on both ends of the floor at this point in my opinion. Now, Durant, I do think there is some diminished results defensively there, but for Philadelphia, this is an elite play finisher, an elite shooter, and someone who I think is a great fit off of the Maxey and B two-man game, which when they are on the court together is still, of course, devastating. Trade number 3, we're staying on the topic of Phoenix and Kevin Durant, this time sending him to Miami for a quite different package. Of course, for the Heat, after trading away Jimmy Butler, they are looking for a new star, and I think the relationship between Kevin Durant and Pat Riley would be a lot better long-term than it had been between Jimmy Butler and Riley. And I think the biggest reason, Pat Riley wants guys who want to play basketball. Kevin Durant, at the heart of his DNA, wants to play basketball, and that's something I've always really respected about him. And when it comes to Phoenix, what they get back in this deal, while they don't get that premier draft chip at pick number 3, they still get to keep pick 29. They add another pick in the 20s at number 20 via the Golden State Warriors. They get a far out unprotected first round pick. And remember, Miami, they do have some trade restrictions still at this point in time. They owe a pick out to Charlotte. They owe some assets out the door. And because of that, it really limits what they're able to trade at this point in time. That 2031 first is trade eligible though. So for Phoenix to get a far out draft asset, that is valuable to them in a big way. And you still, in this deal, walk out with Andrew Wiggins, who I do think is actually a pretty good fit on this Phoenix Suns team right now. Although, yes, it's a TBD on what really the roster is going to look like. I do think Wiggins can be a contributor for them for sure, off of the wing, off of Devin Booker, and someone who takes some of the defensive challenges for their roster moving forward next to Ryan Dunn, which I think works pretty well. Duncan Robinson, it's basically just expiring salary. The one thing that this gives Phoenix long-term compared to that Paul George trade is salary flexibility. You're getting off of Duncan Robinson's contract moving forward compared to eating multiple years of that Paul George contract we saw in trade number 2. This might be a more tenable long-term outcome for Phoenix, even though you're not getting a top 3 pick. You are getting other draft capital and out of salary. And I think that's an advantage in its own right. And you still have Andrew Wiggins, where you could either reroute him at some point in time or just flat out keep him. And then you're getting a young player, Nikola Jovic, who I do think at this point in time has proven to be an NBA caliber guy, someone who can definitely be a top 7-8 man in a rotation for sure. And the Suns getting 3 players for 1 at this point in time isn't bad for their depth either. This opens up flexibility with your cap. I don't think Jovic's rookie extension is going to be too costly. So I think all things considered here, Phoenix, while it's a completely different package than what we saw in trade number 2 with Philadelphia, I think the Suns would still be pretty happy to consider an offer like this, albeit very different from the one we just talked about a couple minutes ago. Trade number 4, New Orleans and Portland, and this is one that Blazers fans are going to have a lot of interest in, landing Zion Williamson in the Pacific Northwest with the Portland Trailblazers. And I think Zion is such an interesting bet risk here for the Blazers. And this does come with pretty significant risk, especially when you consider the assets that are in this deal. And I know some Blazers fans are going to say, why would we trade all of this for Zion Williamson, who barely plays? My counter to that is, why would New Orleans trade Zion Williamson for anything less than substantial value? The risk for New Orleans in trading Zion Williamson is massive. If he's ever healthy, if he's ever on the court for a full season, the Pelicans would look like fools for trading him, especially for pennies on the dollar. You are going to have to take a bit of a risk in trading for Zion Williamson. Now, very pointedly, if he's healthy and on the court, there's no risk. This is a home run trade for Portland if he plays a lot of games and is healthy. Now, that itself is the risk, right? So you have to kind of weigh that decision a lot. There's a lot of weight behind a trade like this. New Orleans, what they get, first of all, some savings on their tax bill, and specifically opening up a little bit of flexibility between where they currently sit and the tax moving forward. And I think if you know anything about New Orleans front office and their ownership and the way they want to save money, that's an important note. They get DeAndre Ayton's expiring salary. I think there's a lot of belief there in New Orleans that Yves Missi is the center of the future, was on the all-rookie team this most recent season for his rookie year. So I think for New Orleans, while Ayton can definitely play for them this year, I don't think this is a long-term, hey, we want DeAndre Ayton for sure. Now, if he's agreeable to a fair number and a significantly reduced contract from the max he's been playing on, definitely something I think New Orleans would not completely rule out. But really what you're getting in this, if you're the Pelicans, is additional draft compensation. They already have pick number 7 in this draft, which could easily turn into someone like Trey Johnson, Kon Knippel, Kasparis Jakichonis. There's some really viable options for them in the top 7. And then you also get pick number 11 now, where you could come back and take a bet on someone with athletic tools like Noah Asenge, or you look at a variety of different options, right? Derek Queen could be such an interesting option for them if he falls to 11. Jeremiah Fear is another player who could be on the radar at 7. You never exactly know how the draft's going to shake out, who's going to be available where. So 7 and 11 are 2 very good assets to work with in a deal, and you get future draft capital, which could be very valuable. An unprotected 2031 first via Portland, which could be the blue chip asset in this deal. If things don't work out well in Portland long term, after extending Chauncey Billups, keeping Joe Cronin around, trading for Zion Williamson, there is some long-term risk, right? And while I do believe in the Blazers' young core, which is why stepping on the accelerator here for me would make some sense with acquiring Zion, there is, of course, risk involved with that, and that's where that 2031 first would be very valuable to New Orleans. And with the Pelicans already owning some of the immediate future of Milwaukee, having another swap option with them in 2028 could prove very valuable as well. So I think all things considered here, this is a pretty hefty package for Portland to part with for Zion Williamson, but very clearly Zion Williamson would become the best offensive player on the Trailblazers today when he's actually available and on the court. So it's a hard trade, a trade that probably just doesn't actually occur because I think both sides have too much to lose in this kind of deal, but I thought it was a fascinating package and one I wanted to talk through in this video for sure. I think an important note I want to make here, the Blazers are kind of sneaky buyers at this offseason. They have such a good young core. I really loved the Denny Avdia trade for them last year. I still believe in a lot of the young pieces there. Donovan Clingan, I loved as a draft pick for them last season. I really think for Portland, like if there's a sneaky buy option in the league, it really is them, because if they step on the accelerator just a bit at the right time, this team is ready to take off in a big way, and I think Zion could be a little bit of that fuel to the fire, so to speak, to start that liftoff over there in Portland. Trade number 5, one with the Detroit Pistons and Brooklyn Nets. And while the Nets, I think, are one of the mystery teams this offseason because they have cap space, they could be a Jonathan Kuminga landing spot in restricted free agency or via sign and trade. We'll see what happens. The Nets also have a lot of draft capital. 4 first-round picks this year. They could go out, be aggressive in a Giannis Antetokounmpo trade, try and win now using some of their cap space and draft picks to vastly improve their roster. Or they can take the long-term approach, and that's what I have them doing here. Now, again, I don't know which way Brooklyn's going to go, which is what makes them so fascinating, but what I do know is for Detroit, a team that owes their 2025 first, it has conveyed officially to Minnesota, pick number 17 in this draft. On draft night, the Pistons, for the first time in years, will have some trade flexibility because that pick conveys. The moment that that pick is made, the Pistons can officially make more trades and still successfully follow the Stepien rule. And I think this trade is a perfect example of how Detroit can adequately improve their roster without assuming too much long-term risk. Getting Cam Johnson here, yes, you are giving up 2 first-round picks and Tobias Harris, who is a quality player for you this past year. Cam Johnson is just significantly better at basketball than Tobias Harris. He's a better shooter, a better play finisher, more capable off the bounce in my opinion, especially at this time. He's a tad bit younger than Tobias Harris as well, and I think just flat out a better team defender than Tobias Harris. So with him just flat out being better at basketball, first of all, Detroit I think here improves their team pretty significantly going forward. So the 2026 first round pick, well, yes, it's a solid asset and one that you just aren't willing to get rid of for free. You're using it in a deal to improve your roster, improve your fit around Cade Cunningham a bit, and it's not too big of a risk because you expect yourself to probably be a playoff team again next season. So you're looking at anything from pick 15 through 25, somewhere in that rough range. And for Brooklyn, it's a draft asset to work with via trade. They have now Tobias Harris's expiring contract going into the season. They could look to make some rapid improvements in other ways. This is an improvement of draft pick control to make other trades. And the long-term risk here for Detroit is that 2028 first. It does limit some of your flexibility. You can't trade 2027. You can't trade your 2029 first now because of this deal, but you're getting a player in Cam Johnson that for the next couple of years projects to be an awesome fit while the rest of this young core grows and blossoms together in Jalen Duren, Cade Cunningham. Hopefully Jaden Ivey comes back healthy. You have some already other good roster bets that fit in with Malik Beasley, Dennis Schroeder, of course Isaiah Stewart. This Pistons team, I do think, with a meaningful upgrade from Tobias Harris to Cam Johnson, could be just a really good team and a team that does try and make it out of the first round as soon as next season. And while that 2028 first is a pretty important asset to give up, 2 first-round picks for Cam Johnson is not a bad deal at all for Detroit. So I do think all in all, this is a pretty fair trade. Brooklyn gets improved trade flexibility moving forward and Tobias Harris's expiring contract to work with going into the February trade deadline. And then Cam Johnson for Detroit is just a perfect fit-like-a-glove option for the Pistons this offseason. Trade number 6 between Denver and Sacramento. And remember, there was a lot of rumor and noise that the Kings in the draft of Marvin Bagley, Luka Doncic, there was significant noise that the Kings would have drafted Michael Porter Jr. second overall. They ultimately now get him in this mock trade. Michael Porter Jr. and Hunter Tyson, two bigger wing forward shooters who can rebound the ball a bit, especially Michael Porter Jr. I think one of the underrated elements of his game is his ability to get on the glass, impact the game that way. Well, yes, I think MPJ comes with a horde of flaws. He's an expensive contract. The duration of his contract, just 2 years left remaining on his deal, is really not that strenuous for an organization to take on. And for Sacramento specifically here, a team that after the De'Aaron Fox trade, there's a lot of questions about how this team's going to fit together, if they have enough three-point shooting, if they're young enough, and if this direction of this franchise is just screwed once again. I think getting significantly younger here. DeMar DeRozan is 9 years older than Michael Porter Jr. Jonas Valanciunas is into his 30s. This is a very sensible trade for both sides, in my opinion, especially with sans draft picks. While DeMar DeRozan, Jonas Valanciunas, both quality players, rotation players, ones that, I do think Sacramento gets a little bit worse here in this trade in terms of raw talent. They get a lot younger, and they get a player in Michael Porter Jr., who I do think, when it comes to his next contract, is going to be significantly cheaper than he is on this current deal. And around Domantas Sabonis, I do believe is a very, very good fit with his shooting. And I think there's more ways that Sacramento can look to use him in dribble handoff and back cuts that Denver hasn't always weaponized him in. Of course, Aaron Gordon's existence there in Denver has at times taken precedent as an off-ball baseline player for Denver. And I think Michael Porter Jr. has some elements to his game that can still be unlocked in a different team offensive context. Not to say that Sabonis is a better passer than Jokic. That's not what I'm suggesting. But I think the style of play is just a little bit different. And for Denver, it's very obvious what you're getting here. A significant talent increase. You're getting a backup big man who can actually play, screen. Jonas Valanciunas was one of the top screen assist players in the league. And I think for Denver specifically, you look at Jamal Murray, his effectiveness when Nikola Jokic is out of the game is quite diminished. And I think Valanciunas as a screen setter could be very valuable into kind of uplifting some of the non-Jokic minutes for Denver moving forward. And then DeRozan specifically, another guy who can go get his own shot, create off the bounce. Again, if you're trying to win the non-Jokic minutes or at least hold water, tread water a little bit, I think DeMar DeRozan and Jonas Valanciunas help you do that in a big way from your offensive creation standpoint, whether it's Valanciunas' screen setting or DeMar DeRozan's ability to go get a bucket. I also think DeRozan would be a tremendous off-ball player off of Nikola Jokic and give them just a little bit more juice in the cutting department, give them a little bit more juice in the DHO department, and just playing off of like kind of that little cat and mouse game in the mid-range. I think DeRozan, Valanciunas here helps them quite a bit, makes the Nuggets quite a bit better now, and they save some money in the process. And for Sacramento, they get noticeably younger. They have really great three-point shooting. That's one of the big problems with Denver right now. They don't have a lot of three-point shooting. This doesn't address that for them. But all things considered here, DeRozan, a talent upgrade over MPJ at this point in time for sure. Then our final trade in today's video, trade number 7, and it's a sneaky big one. LaMelo Ball to the Orlando Magic. Lonzo Ball, about a week ago, said that he wouldn't be shocked if LaMelo Ball gets traded. And I thought that was very interesting coming from LaMelo's older brother specifically. Now, we'll see if that actually happens. For me, just point blank, I think it would be a mistake if Charlotte trades LaMelo Ball. But if it's a mistake they make, you want to have your favorite team be the one that capitalizes on that mistake. And I think Orlando is a team that is positioned to do that here. They have a collection of young players that I think they could interest the Hornets in. You look at Kentavious Caldwell-Pope's salary being a facilitating piece in this deal, and then a variety of young guys. Anthony Black, who was a former top 10 pick, someone I really liked coming out of Arkansas. He is a great two-way point guard, can really get after it on the defensive end of the floor, really elite screen navigation tools. This kid can flat out guard. He can generate transition opportunities, and I do think would be a pretty fun fit with Brandon Miller there in Charlotte. And then you're getting some wing bets in Jett Howard, who, to be quite frank, I didn't love when the Orlando Magic drafted him. I was not a big Jett Howard fan, not a huge believer in his game coming out of Michigan. But I do think, all things considered here, Jett getting a change of scenery to play for Charles Lee, the three-point volume that the Hornets want to play with, I think would work pretty well there. And I think the Hornets could really afford him an opportunity. Tristan da Silva, I think his kind of connectiveness, his playmaking ability that he, of course, showcased at Colorado and got to display a bit when he was on the court for Orlando as well, would stand out in a big way. And I just think he's a really solid player that would help Charlotte right now. I think the Hornets' depth is terrible. They don't have enough starting caliber players. They don't have enough real rotation caliber players. I think you do get 3 young players here who have some significant upside bets to become either starting level guys like Anthony Black, or rotation contributors like Tristan da Silva and maybe Jett Howard. You also get 3 first-round picks, 2 of them this year, pick number 16, pick number 25, and a future unprotected 2027 first-round pick for Orlando. For the Magic, this is a home run trade. Yes, you're giving up 3 first-round picks, but it doesn't really hurt your long-term flexibility too much. Thinking about trading the 2027 first, it's only a couple years away. That will convey rather quickly. And then the 2025 draft, 2 of these firsts are expiring, essentially, right? These are going to be used in a month. So I think with that in mind, if you're Orlando, like, this is something I would be really slamming my hands on the table saying, make this trade, make this trade, make this trade. And if you're Charlotte, again, I would not make this trade. But with the rumors, some of the questions about LaMelo Ball and maybe his uncertain future there in Charlotte, would the Hornets look to reset again? I think that's a real possibility. One that if I was a Hornets fan, I'd feel pretty disgusted by. But Hornets fans, I think you guys understand that this is maybe a reality that could come to fruition. I wanted to talk through it as a possibility. Now, again, for my Hornets fans specifically watching, I want to say right now, I would not do this. I hope you guys don't do this. I would not trade LaMelo Ball at all unless I'm getting like a really ridiculous offer, really ridiculous. But I would not do that if I was Charlotte, all things considered. I really hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more NBA content. Had a lot of fun putting this together, recording it, and I hope you guys did enjoy. And we'll catch you in the very next Utility Sports video.